Da, na, 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 da, 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 da. Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Sci-Fi Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. And before I begin my review, I just want to pay my respects to the late Anton Yelchin, who played Chekhov in the Reboot franchise. And sadly, he passed away. He was involved in a fatal car crash. And so I just want to pay my respects and say rest in peace, Anton Yelchin. You did a great job as Chekhov. And Walter Koenig even said that he enjoyed your work. So rest in peace. Um, this week we are going to take a look at the reboot of Star Trek from 2009, starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Karl Urban, and yes, Anton Yelchin, and directed by J.J Abrams. And this version is kind of a reboot, kind of a prequel, and it shows how the classic cast of characters from the original series come together. So that's kind of the prequel aspect of it. And we'll get a bright young cast of up-and-coming actors playing the classic roles of Spock and James Kirk and Dr. McCoy and Uhura and Chekhov and Scotty, all those great characters. So I was really excited about hearing about we're going to get those classic characters back. And, with today's special effects, they didn't have back in the day, of course. And I love to see a fiery young cast, and that's exactly what we get here. And it does inject a little bit of Star Wars, I must say. I'm not going to lie. But, you could say that Star Wars stole from Star Trek, so, mi casa su casa, I say. they all borrow a little bit, it's definitely not plagiarism. It's not to that aspect. But there is a little borrowing. So I was really excited to see we're going to get the classic characters back. So how the story begins is we see the USS Kelvin and its crew, its ship and crew, and what happens is it gets attacked by the Romulan Empire and their commander Nero, played by Eric Bana, and they get attacked by this gigantic ship which is like the size of a planet, and what happens is that he kills the commander of the USS Kelvin. So Jim Kirk's father actually takes control of the bridge, and he evacuates the crew, including his wife, who is pregnant with his child. And he does get to see the child being born, which is Jim Kirk, and he gets to name him and everything. But at the same time, he takes command of the ship, and his plan is to drive the ship into the Romulan ship, destroying the USS Kelvin, and trying to do as much damage as he can to the Romulan ship, but at the cost of his own life, of course. And so it's kind of a sad ending for him, and he was actually played by Chris Hemsworth of Marvel Cinematic Universe fame. And what happens is after that we meet young Kirk as a young boy, and he's kind of a screw up. He's kind of a he's kind of a punk. He's getting in all kinds of mischief. He steals his stepfather's car and drives it off a cliff. He gets into bar brawls. We see him flirting with Uhura at the bar. He meets Uhura, who is a young Starfleet officer at the time, and these other Starfleet officers don't like that too much, and they get into a big brawl with like 5 against 1, and Captain Christopher Pike sees this take place, and he tries to give a shellacking to young Kirk and saying, "What are you doing? Your father was a great man. He saved 800 people in 12 minutes, and I dare you to do the same." And that really hits him hard. He's like, wow, and he decides he's going to enlist in Starfleet. And along the way, he meets Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, played by Karl Urban, who does a great job of, he plays a lot of respect to DeForest Kelley, of course, with his classic lines, from Bones. Are you out of your Vulcan mind? Damn it, Jim. I'm a doctor, not an engineer. It plays great homage to him, and also he brings his own new flavor into the role, and I really like his performance. So the young crew gets together with Uhura and on the Star Trek Enterprise, and they have the big Kobayashi Maru test, which is actually created by Spock in this film. And so Jim Kirk passes the test, and Spock doesn't like it. So he accuses Jim Kirk of cheating, and they have a hearing in front of the Senate, in front of the Starfleet Academy. And they like the fact that Jim Kirk, reprogrammed the test because nobody had ever thought of that before. So that gave him brownie points. But Spock really doesn't like, Kirk at first. At first, they're like enemies. There's definitely a bitterness there between the two because Spock's jealous that he passed his test. So Jim Kirk befriends all the crew and is a rising young cadet, and he's kind of still has a mischievous side to him. He's definitely still a playboy, but at the same time he's very smart, and he really knows all the rules of Starfleet and all the trials and tribulations. And so what happens is the Star Trek Enterprise is now commanded by Christopher Pike. And what happens is they get into an altercation with the Romulan ship again, so it becomes a similar scenario. And Spock is actually Christopher Pike's science officer. And so Captain Nero launches an attack against the Enterprise. And somehow he knows Spock. And Spock's like, I don't believe we met, have we? And we find out that he does know Spock, because Captain Nero is actually from the future, an alternate reality, an alternate timeline, where Captain Nero blames Spock for the destruction of his planet. So in turn, his plan is to actually destroy Vulcan as revenge for the planet Romulus being destroyed. And that's exactly what he does. So Spock actually beams down to Vulcan to, save whoever he can and try and, beam everyone up to the Enterprise, as many people as they can. And they get about 10,000 people up there, but at the expense of Spock's mother, unfortunately. So Spock's mother doesn't make it. And Spock's mother, by the way, is played by Winona Ryder, an interesting bit of casting. And Jim Kirk actually did try to warn him that this was going to happen, that the Romulans were coming, but they didn't believe him. They didn't want to listen to him. They actually ejected him off the Enterprise. They sent him down to this, frozen planet somewhere in the middle of nowhere, where he actually happens to run into Spock, played by Leonard Nimoy, old Spock from the original TV series. So what a great way to inject the great Leonard Nimoy back as Spock once again. So they become good friends, and Spock tells him his whole story about how his run-ins with Captain Nero and the Romulans, and that he was not responsible for the destruction of the planet, but Nero blames him. So he tells Jim Kirk the whole story, and he wants Jim Kirk to let everyone else know at the Enterprise, and he helps Kirk get back to the Enterprise, where the plan is to talk some sense into Spock, to actually get him pissed off, so much so that he can't control the Enterprise. By the way, Captain Christopher Pike is taken hostage by Captain Nero, so Spock takes command of the Enterprise. And so he's jaded. He has all kinds of mixed feelings. He really isn't fit to command the Enterprise at that time because his planet, he just saw his planet destroyed. Um, so he's emotionally compromised by Jim Kirk. Jim Kirk, really gets under his skin, and already he doesn't like Kirk, but with Kirk confronting him about his feelings, and did you just see what they did to your planet? And he really pisses him off. They start fighting. They have a nasty fist fight. And Spock's about to choke the life out of Kirk. you know, Spock's father, luckily stops him, and then Spock realizes, yeah, I'm not fit to. I'm too emotionally distraught to command the Enterprise now. And guess who takes control? Captain James T. Kirk. Yes! And there we have it. Classic crew of the Enterprise all together to take on Captain Nero and the Romulans in one huge, massive battle. And what happens is Kirk and Spock and a couple others actually board the Romulan ship to try and, destroy it from within. But at the same time, the Enterprise is doing their part to destroy the ship. And there you have it. They have a ultimate confrontation, an epic battle with amazing special effects. And this movie is amazing with the special effects and the action. It's definitely a much more action-packed version of Star Trek than we've ever seen. So yeah, they throw a little bit of Star Wars aspect in there. Especially with the when they make the jump to warp speed, it looks just like when they jump to light speed in Star Trek. But like I said, you can say Star Trek stole that from you can say Star Wars stole that from Star Trek. So it's a two-way street. They all borrow a little bit, but it's just a great return to form for the franchise, and I'm really excited. I'm so excited about Star Trek again. I'm excited about the new franchise. I love these characters, and I love this young, bright new cast. It pays great homage to the original TV series. So I gave it 2 laser blasts up. So thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen, in the Sci-Fi Corner. Tune in and blast off.